Emily Thompson had always prided herself on having the kind of marriage that other people envied. At 35, she was a high school English teacher in the quiet suburbs of Portland, Oregon, where the rain fell like a gentle lullaby most days. Her husband, Mark, was the steady anchor in her life, a 38-year-old accountant who worked for a mid-sized firm downtown. He was the type who brought her coffee in bed on weekends, remembered every anniversary with a bouquet of her favorite lilies, and never raised his voice, even during their rare arguments. "He's perfect," she'd tell her friends over brunch, laughing off their teasing about how she must have won the lottery in the husband department. Mark was quiet, reliable, with a dry sense of humor that could make her giggle even on her worst days. But perfection, as Emily would soon learn, was often just a carefully constructed facade. It started on a crisp autumn evening in late October. The leaves outside their cozy two-story home were turning shades of amber and gold, crunching underfoot as Emily stirred a pot of chili on the stove. Her husband, Mark, had called earlier to say he'd be home late, another client meeting that ran over. She didn't mind. It gave her time to grade papers and unwind with a glass of wine. The knock on the door came around 8 p.m., sharp and insistent, cutting through the soft jazz playing on the radio. Emily wiped her hands on a dish towel and peered through the peephole. Two men in dark suits stood on the porch, their faces stern under the glow of the streetlight. One was tall and broad-shouldered, the other shorter with a neatly trimmed beard. They didn't look like solicitors. Heart pounding a little faster than usual, she opened the door a crack, keeping the chain latched. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice steady, despite the unease creeping in. "Mrs. Thompson?" the taller one said, flashing a badge that gleamed under the porch light. "I'm Agent Harlan from the FBI, and this is Agent Ruiz. We're looking for your husband, Mark Thompson. Is he home?" Emily blinked, a nervous laugh escaping her lips. "Mark? This must be some kind of mistake. He's at work, late client meeting. What could the FBI possibly want with an accountant?" The agents exchanged a glance that sent a chill down her spine. "Ma'am, we can't discuss details right now, but it's urgent. If he contacts you, please have him call this number." Agent Harlan handed her a card, his expression unreadable. "And if you notice anything unusual, give us a call." "Unusual?" Emily closed the door, her mind racing. She tried calling Mark, but it went straight to voicemail. By the time he slipped in around 10 p.m., smelling faintly of rain and something metallic she couldn't place, she'd convinced herself it was a mix-up, maybe a case of mistaken identity. "Honey, the FBI was here," she said, half-joking, as she wrapped her arms around him. "They think you're some criminal mastermind or something." Mark froze for a split second, his body tensing under her touch. Then he chuckled, pulling her close. "Probably got me confused with that guy from the office. You know, the one with the shady tax advice?" He kissed her forehead, and they laughed it off over reheated chili. But that night, as they lay in bed, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that his laugh had sounded forced, like an actor missing his cue. The next few days, the suspicion gnawed at her like a persistent itch. Little things she'd always dismissed started to stand out. Mark's briefcase, for instance. He always locked it away in the hall closet the moment he got home, never leaving it out like he used to when they first married 5 years ago. And his aversion to certain parts of town. Whenever she suggested driving through the industrial district for a shortcut, he'd insist on the longer route, mumbling about traffic. He never talked about his childhood either. "Rough family stuff," he'd say with a shrug whenever she pressed, changing the subject to her day or some mundane news headline. One afternoon, while doing laundry, Emily decided to surprise him by dry cleaning his favorite suit jacket, the one he wore to important meetings. As she checked the pockets, her fingers brushed against something stiff. Pulling it out, she stared in disbelief. 2 passports. One was Mark's, with his familiar photo and our address. The other, it had his face, but the name read Daniel Reed, born in Chicago, not Seattle, like he'd told her. The expiration dates didn't match, and the second one looked worn, like it had seen a lot of use. Her heart hammered in her chest. Why would he have this? Was it a fake? She shoved them back into the pocket, her mind spinning with possibilities. Identity theft? A prank? But deep down, a voice whispered that this was no joke. That night, she watched him over dinner, searching his face for clues. He seemed normal. Too normal. "Everything okay at work?" she asked casually. "Yeah, just the usual number crunching," he replied, smiling, but his eyes darted away just for a moment. The suspicion festered. Emily started paying closer attention, noting how he always paid in cash for everything, how he avoided photos at family gatherings, claiming he was camera shy. She even rifled through his desk drawers when he was in the shower, finding nothing but old receipts and pens. But the passports haunted her. What if he was having an affair, or worse? Driven by a mix of fear and curiosity, Emily decided to follow him one evening when he claimed another late meeting. She told him she was meeting a friend for book club, then parked her car a block away from their house, watching him drive off in his sedan. Her hands trembled on the wheel as she tailed him at a distance, the city lights blurring through the rain-streaked windshield. He didn't head to his office building downtown. Instead, he veered toward the outskirts, pulling into a dimly lit parking lot behind an abandoned warehouse. Emily parked across the street, her breath fogging the glass as she watched. Mark got out, glancing around nervously before a black SUV pulled up. A man in a leather jacket stepped out, handing Mark a thick envelope. Mark passed him another in return, their exchange quick and wordless. Then the man drove off, and Mark lingered, lighting a cigarette, something Emily had never seen him do. Her stomach twisted. What was this? Drugs? Blackmail? She drove home in a daze, her mind reeling. That night, unable to sleep, she grabbed her laptop and typed his name into a search engine on a whim. Nothing unusual at first, just LinkedIn profiles and old articles. But then, buried in the results, she clicked on an FBI Most Wanted list. There, staring back at her, was Mark's face, or rather, Daniel Reed's face. The caption read, "Wanted for embezzlement, money laundering, and suspected ties to the Esposito crime family, fugitive at large. Reward $50,000. Emily's world shattered. The man she'd loved, the one who held her hand during her mother's funeral, who whispered, "I love you" every night, was a criminal, a fugitive. Tears streamed down her face as she pieced it together. The fake identity, the secretive behavior, the accounting job that never seemed to involve actual clients. How had she been so blind? The confrontation came the next morning, over coffee in their sunlit kitchen. Mark was humming as he poured himself a cup, oblivious to the storm brewing. Emily slammed the passports on the table, her voice shaking. "Who the hell are you, Mark? Or should I say Daniel?" He paled, the mug slipping from his fingers and shattering on the floor. Coffee splattered like blood across the tiles. "Emily, how did you—" "The FBI came looking for you. I followed you last night. I saw the exchange, and I saw this." She shoved her phone at him, the FBI page glaring on the screen. Mark sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. When he looked up, his eyes were red-rimmed, filled with a desperation she'd never seen. "Please, let me explain." And he did. Haltingly, with tears choking his words, he unraveled the truth. His real name was Daniel Reed. 10 years ago, he was a low-level operative in the Esposito Syndicate, a powerful organized crime group out of Chicago. He'd handled their finances, laundering money through shell companies, cooking books to evade the IRS. But when a deal went south and bodies started piling up, Daniel got scared. He stole evidence, a ledger of transactions that could bring down the whole operation, and fled, faking his death in a car accident. He reinvented himself as Mark Thompson, moved to Portland, and got a legitimate job as an accountant to blend in. "I met you at that coffee shop, remember? You spilled your latte on my shoe." He reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "It was real, Emily. All of it. I fell in love with you. I thought I could leave that life behind." Emily's emotions warred inside her, betrayal clashing with the love she'd built her life around. "You lied to me every day. What about the envelopes? Are you still involved?" He shook his head vehemently. "No, that was an old contact. Someone who helped me escape. I was paying him off to keep quiet. It's over, I swear." She wanted to believe him. God, she did. The man before her wasn't a monster. He was scared, human, flawed. They talked for hours, her anger giving way to sobs as he held her. Maybe they could run, start over together. Forgiveness flickered like a fragile flame. But fate had other plans. That evening, as they sat on the couch, hashing out what to do next, the front door burst open with a deafening crash. Flashlights pierced the darkness, shouts echoing, "FBI! Hands up!" Agents swarmed in, guns drawn. Mark was tackled to the floor, cuffs snapping around his wrists. Emily screamed, backing against the wall as Agent Harlan approached. "Mrs. Thompson, step aside. He's under arrest." Mark twisted his head toward her, his eyes locking on hers amid the chaos. "Emily," he whispered urgently as they dragged him away, "check the box under the floorboards in the bedroom. Everything you need to know is there." The house fell silent after they left, the door hanging off its hinges. Emily stood, frozen, her world in ruins. Hours later, when the shock ebbed enough for her to move, she crept upstairs to their bedroom. Her fingers trembled as she pried up the loose floorboard under the nightstand, the one she'd always thought was just a quirk of the old house. Inside was a small middle box, dusty and unassuming. She lifted the lid, her breath catching. Stacks of cash, another passport, this one in her name with a fake identity, and a USB drive labeled "For Emily." But what made her gasp, her blood running cold, was the photo tucked beneath. Mark, Daniel, standing arm in arm with a woman who looked eerily like her, but older, in a wedding photo dated 15 years ago. Scrawled on the back in faded ink, "First wife, she knew too much." The room spun. Was it all a lie? Had he done this before? As sirens wailed in the distance, Emily clutched the box, the final twist unraveling everything she thought she knew. The man she had loved was gone, but the nightmare was just beginning.